Welcome back to Decal Models. So in this video I'm going to be finishing off the interior for the Lancia 037 from Hasegawa. So the same way I did in the last video, I'm just going to nip all of the parts off the sprue to start with, and I'm cutting it fairly close but leaving about a 1mm gap or so, and then once they're all off the sprue I can start cleaning them up. So going in a bit closer so that the cutters are flush with the part now pretty much, and then I can tidy it up with the sanding sticks. So I'll start off with the coarse one just to get the bulk of it down, and then I'll move on to the smoother one in a little bit. So as I'm going round, I'm making sure that I keep the sander flat to the edge. I don't curve it over or reshape it in any way. So as you can see there, just keeping it flat along the whole edge, and then it's all smooth together. So I do the round parts in the same way, and as you can see I'm rotating it as I'm sanding so that I don't end up with any flat spots, and keeping a nice round shape to it that it should have. So again, I'm using, I think it's the fine file on this. It looks a little bit coarse, but it is the fine one. And then once the bulk of it's gone, I move to the extra fine. So once I've got it down to where I want it, just run my fingers off it just to make sure it's all nice and smooth. So on smaller parts like the indicator stalks, I'm just using the knife to carefully scrape off the seam line that it's got on each of those. So it's not going to be really seen when it's fitted, but it's again good practice. I like doing things like that. So what I'm now doing is just a quick test fit of all the parts to make sure that they fit where they're supposed to. So you can see I've got the back area there where the rear screen goes, and then the two side parts for the roll cage, and then I'm going to glue in the top part while it's all fitted, because by doing it this way rather than just on the bench, it means that it's all lined up properly. It's going to sit exactly where it's supposed to, and after I've painted it and I come to fit it properly for the final time, I know that it's going to be exactly where it should be. So make sure it's all lined up properly, and then leave that to dry, and then test fit the side panels. So there's a little notch at the back of these that it just sits into, so you've got two pins at the bottom and then a notch at the back, and then the dash just sits in these little groove parts here in that panel. So I'm just checking it all fits where it's supposed to, and because it's a dry fit, things easily get knocked out of place, so I'm just rechecking the alignment. Put the door panel back where it should be. Now, there we go. So I'm happy with that. At that point it's where I want it to be, so I can move on. So when it comes to painting, there's various ways of attaching the parts. So for the roll cage, I've just stuck it to a stick with some double-sided tape. For this part, because I've got the pins at the bottom of it, I can use some crocodile clips. And then for the dash, a big lump of blue tack and another stick to hold that down where it wants to be. So as long as it's firmly stuck, so that the pressure from the airbrush isn't going to pull it off, it'll be fine. So another stick with some double-sided tape, and then I can stick the door panels to this, and then for this it's another crocodile clip. So it doesn't fit that way, so sometimes you have to try various positions and things to make sure it's actually gripped properly. It's not going to ping off, especially if you've got small parts. So now I can move on to the spray booth. So Zero Paint's grey primer is my go-to primer. So as always, check the flow and then I can start spraying. So again, just nice light coats just to get it on the first key coat there. So I build it up, light coats, you don't want to go heavy. Same applies for the steering column, just light coats, and it'll 2 or 3 coats and it'll be exactly where I want it, and I don't have to worry about runs or anything like that in the paint then. And then onto the main dash part. So working out the best way to attack it to get into all of the areas that I want. So as you can see, I'm moving the part as I'm going around various sections to make sure that I get into all of the areas and don't miss anything. If I spray it in one angle in one direction, then I'll end up with parts getting missed. So, and to the underside now, make sure I don't miss that bit as well. So onto the steering wheel. So as you can see, again, I'm rotating the steering wheel as I'm going, so I make sure I get all of the areas, and then do the other side as well so I don't miss anything. So with the roll cage, it's particularly important to make sure that you keep moving it around, because it's very easy with things of this shape and how thin it is to end up missing parts. So take my time making sure I don't miss anything on there and I get all the bits. So as you can see, I went off, checked it, come back to redo some bits. So now that all the primer's applied, I can move on to some colour. So gloss black from Zero Paints. So as usual, loaded up my airbrush, test the flow, and then I can start spraying on the dash. So the same as the primer, nice light coats, and then I'll build the layers up as I go, making sure I get all of the different areas and angles so I get an even coverage. On this bit, I only want to paint the roll cage, so I'm not going all over it. So I'm just picking that part out for now. Make sure I get the bottom of it again. There's things like that that will be visible that you might think that it won't be once it's all assembled and everything. So it's worth spending the time at this point, double checking everything, making sure you have got all areas covered. So once that's done, move on to the other side, because this is the side that's on the engine bay, so I do want all of that black. So for the steering wheel, I'm only wanting to do the centre part. So I'm ignoring the outside a bit, just concentrating on getting paint on that centrepiece. Then back to the dash, give it a second coat. You notice I'm not bothering with the top of it because that's going to be something different going on there. So just making sure I get all of the sides, all the different angles again for the main face of it. Then back to the roll cage. So again, the same as I did with the primer, making sure I don't miss any parts and take it slowly to just get the actual roll cage part, and then check it as I go, make sure I've not missed anywhere. So once all of the base colour's down, I'm moving on to some dry brushing. So I'm using the LP11, which is part of the new lacquer range from Tamiya. And if anyone that's used them knows how good they are. And they're now my go-to brush paints. So I've got some on the brush, and then as you can see, I'm wiping most of it off on the kitchen towel, and then the final bit just off on the stick. And then I can start going over. And you can see instantly the difference that it makes. For this, because as you saw with the first part of the video, I'm going for quite a heavy weathered look. So depending on how dirty or clean, how old or new you want it, determines how heavily you apply this. And because I'm going for that sort of heavily used look, I've not fully taken it all off the brush. If I went further on taking it off, then it's going to be a lot more subtle effect that this gives. So now that I've done that, move on, put some masking tape down around the roll cage. So it's cut to length already, and then just using a pair of sharp tweezers or pointy tweezers, just push it down nicely. And do the same on the side parts. So again, time spent here will save you a lot of time later on if you make a mess or do anything, just to make sure that I get it right into the corner, and then when I spray the next colour I get a nice crisp line. So first up, I've got some LP8, which I'm just going to very quickly just go over the top of the steering wheel with. So airbrush loaded up, and then after a quick test to make sure the flow's coming out, just going to go around very carefully, just the very top of the steering wheel. One of the things about these paints is they have very good coverage, so this is spraying nicely out the airbrush. I'll not put any thinners or anything in, and that's over pretty much black, so you can see how well it's doing. Just give it another coat. Again, I'm making sure I get all the way around so I don't miss anything. So next up, some Zero Paints aluminium, and then I can start work on the side panel. So you can see I've masked off the dash, and what I don't know what they are, whether they look like speakers or something, I'm not 100%, but whatever they are, I want those black, and then these panels are like aluminium panels, so I'm just spraying those quickly, and then with that done I can move on to the L-clad gunmetal. And then as you saw me masking off the roll cage, this is now getting a coat of that, the same as I did on the interior, so that it's all going to colour match. And then the same on the door panels. So I painted these gloss black originally when I was doing the other parts, but then changed my mind, decided that I want that the same colour as the rest of the interior, so over with the gunmetal I go. Same with the second panel. So once that's done, load the airbrush up with some semi-gloss black, again 0 paints range, and then I can do the steering column. So I think this is the only bit for this paint. But again, I prefer airbrushing these rather than hand brushing them. It gives a better finish, and although it's a small part and hardly going to be seen, I still prefer to spend the time loading up the airbrush and spraying it and getting that nice finish on it. So as you saw earlier when I did the dash, I didn't paint the top of it. That's because I'm going to use this charcoal textured paint for it. I'm going to do the same on the steering wheel. So again, checking the flow and start going over it. And because it's got bits in, it's not the easiest thing to spray. But as you can see, once you figure out how to do it with the pressure ramped right up and the needle all the way back, it does come out and give a nice coverage, as you can see, and then it doesn't need a lot. And then same on the steering wheel. And I don't know how well it picks up on camera. I masked off that yellow strip that I did, and I've also masked off the centre column. So you can see how high pressure I've got, the fact that that bit of kitchen towel is moving under the spray. So one of my favourite bits now is unmasking and seeing how everything all comes together with the different colours and shades and stuff. So I get that back piece off to start with, and then I can get my tweezers and then come in and get those smaller bits of masking tape. And if you're eagle-eyed, you might spot that I've actually doubled up on this, because the tape that I originally used where I showed you masking it didn't fully cover all the way around. So there you go, you can see a second layer just to finish it off, so that there's no gaps in it or anything. So it looks the same, but it's definitely different. So then once the roll cage fits on, it's all going to blend into one, hopefully. So putting all these to the side, as you can see, I've dry brushed the door panels when I was doing the dash, so they've got a bit of a worn look to them. So, and then I can unmask the dash and see what it actually looks like underneath all of this tape. So just being careful there, I don't want to scratch it with the tip of the tweezers, so just push my nail against it to start with, just to get the edge up. Because you could use a knife or you could use the tip of the tweezers, but you risk slipping, and then if you do that, then you're going to have a big scratch down the middle of your piece. So carefully picking at that bit, because it was sticking up a little bit, and then same on that one. I've got something to get hold of there, and I can give it a pull, and then that one's off. So that's that side done. So now onto the main section of it. If I can get hold of it. There we go. And it should have some nice crisp lines, hopefully, if all goes well, between the aluminium and the black. So there we go. So next up is the steering wheel. So get rid of that bit of masking tape on my tweezers, and then I can start with that top section where the yellow stripe is. And unfortunately my camera decides to focus on my bench instead of what I'm working on, so apologies for that. Hopefully you can still work out what it is I'm doing. So as I'm masking this bit, you'll start to see the contrast in the two shades, or the shades of black. So I've got the gloss in the centre, the textured one on the outside, and then that yellow strip just to break up the monotony of all of the black. So now get some XF1, which is the enamel range, and then I can start picking out some of the detail. So to start with, I'm just going to go around the air vents with this. So using a relatively new brush that's still pointy, I can get into the detail. So the last thing I want to do while I'm doing this is to slip, or if I used an old brush that is frayed a little bit then and not got that point to it, then I'm not going to be able to get a sharper line and it's not going to look as neat. So that's what I'm doing. So I'll get the first one done and then I'll move on to the second one. That's one down, and then second one to go. Now again, I didn't realise at this point that my camera wasn't focusing properly, so hopefully you can still see the detail in what I'm doing here. So LP11 again, and now I can start picking out some of the buttons and things. So I've switched over to applying the brush now, because these are smaller parts. So all of these buttons are getting painted silver. Some of them are going to stay silver, some of them will have a separate colour over them. Just having the silver helps the other colours to go over the black easier. So just go over them all to start with. So I'm just assessing those ones up by the main dials, and I thought I'm going to use a finer brush for those because they are very small. So just get a little bit of paint loaded up on the brush on this super fine one, and then I can move in and get those tiny little ones there. So there's 4, one on each corner on there. So that's it for the dash, and then I've just got a few to do on the steering wheel, going around with the same method with that very fine brush, just to highlight the bolt heads around the centre. It's this sort of little attention to detail that makes a difference to me, so I like doing things like this and seeing that detail come out. Moving back to the dash, I've got some clear yellow, which again is the enamel range from Tamiya, and I'm just going to pick out this button down here, or light I believe it would be. So this is where you can see the benefit of having the silver base below it, because if I did this over the black it just wouldn't show up at all. So then once that's done, I'll move on to LP52, which is the clear red from the new lacquer range, and then I've got that larger square to do with that. So you can see there the red and the yellow showing through, and then LP7, which is the gloss red, for a couple more buttons. Hopefully you can see that at these angles. It just breaks up the monotony and adds a bit of colour to it all. So move that away, and now I can move on to the decals. So get them all cut out. So I'm just going to go through, cut them all out, the ones that I need to start with, and then I can work out positioning and placement after I've got them all. So now that I've got that all cut out, get my microsol. So the first decal I soaked in water, and now I'll get some microset, put a little bit where I want the decal to go, and then I can start positioning the decal. So some microset in there, and then with my tweezers just very carefully pick that up, and then I can put that in the hole. This one's a little bit tricky because it's quite a deep recess that's got to go into, so it needs pushing down and carefully positioning and orientating to get it exactly where I want. So takes a bit of finessing to get it right, but again, it's little details that are important with the orientation that if you don't get it right at this point, it will really show up and irritate you. So just fly through the rest of them now. Same process, microsol to start with, and then put the decal down, and then I've put some microset down over the top. So quick dab with the tissue, get rid of the excess moisture. And then same with the centre one for the steering wheel. then I've got the lettering to go on there. So I realised after I put it on I got it upside down, so quick spin round with the tweezers and then it's all nicely positioned where I want it. And there you go, that's the steering wheel pretty much done. Just a little bit more left to do. So that's the dash all finished with the decals. And then next piece that I'm going to do is get the rear screen. So I left this on the sprue to not get it damaged or anything floating around the bench. So same again as I did earlier with the main sprue parts, cut it off to start with and then trim it back. And so I don't damage the clear part, I'm trimming it a little bit further away with the cutters. But I am using very sharp cutters that are designed specifically for this, so they're not going to splinter or damage it. If you use the wrong sort of cutters for this, then it can damage the clear part, which being clear you're not going to be able to hide it, so use decent cutters for that. And then as you can see there, it sticks out a fair bit more, so get my sanding stick and then I can tidy it all up again. Back with the super fine sander and then just clean the edges off. So I'm just test fitting it now in the back panel where it's supposed to go, and it's a very snug fit, so I'm just seeing whether I'm happy or not. I think it needs a little bit more work, so back to the sander and then test fit again. So I'm just doing a little bit of sanding at a time and test fitting, and it's obviously, you heard the phrase, it's easier to take it off than it is to put it on, and in this case you wouldn't get it back on, so tiny little bit at a time. And again, I'm making sure the sanders are perfectly flat to the edge to not do any other damage. So happy with that now, so move on to some glue. So for this I'm using the Bob Smith Super Gold with the black lid, which is slightly thicker than the one with the white lid, so it doesn't run the same. So put a small bead down that end and a small bead down the other end. And the advantage of this super glue is it doesn't mark the clear plastic, so, and it's also a lot stronger than using something like PVA. So since I've got it, this is what I use for clear parts now. As long as you don't actually get any fingerprints in it or slip or anything stupid like that, it should be fine. So that's that piece in, so happy with that. And then move on to actually starting to fit it into the main interior section. So again, I'm not using loads of glue, just a little bit in each of the holes because it doesn't need loads in this. Make sure it's orientated the right way around. So that's looking okay. Yeah, happy with that. So then I can fit the roll cage. So same again, a little bit of glue in that front hole and then a little bit of glue up the top there. And then same again on the other side. And then I can get the roll cage and that'll fit nicely. So I'm not bothered to put any glue in the bottom sections because it doesn't really need it. These are the main parts that touch. I think if I was to go and attempt to glue those bottom arms in, it'd end up being a mess because they just move around a bit too much. And again, it doesn't need any more than what I've given it, so that's fine. So just make sure that they are positioned in the little grooves that they've got, and then I can put the side panels on. And just put a bit there because that's the only thing that's holding it at the top. You can see there that bottom panel of the roll cage I was talking about doesn't quite touch fully, so it'd be a pointless putting glue on that. So that's one side done. And same again on this side, get some glue in those little few holes. And that's fitting nicely. So happy with that. So next bit that I wanted to do was get some X22 clear, and I'm using acrylic for this because it's not going to do any damage, and I'm just going to go over these decals that I've put in for the dials just to give it a kind of appearance that it's got a glass or perspex cover or something on it, and also to seal them in. I'm just going to go around doing all of these now. And that one that was recessed, I put a decent amount in there because there's plenty of space for it. These, again, I'm putting a decent amount, a reasonable amount on, but not loads, so it doesn't look like it's bulging or anything like that. Just enough to give it that look that it's got a glass cover on it. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here, that I'm building the layer up and blending it into itself so that it flows nicely and there's no gaps or anything. So hopefully when it all dries it looks like one nice smooth piece. Right, and then the same again with the centre of the steering wheel over that decal there, and I'm putting quite a bit on that because I want it to have that look to it where it's a bit thicker. So at this point it's all done. Unfortunately, when I went to do that final bit with putting the dashing and everything, my camera didn't record, so I haven't got that footage unfortunately, so apologies for that. But there you go, you can see it all in there now as it should look. So I'm happy with that, it's come out as I wanted it to. So there you go, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you on the next one.